Greetings, everyone. My name is Mohammad Sadman Shikdar, and today our group is gonna analyze the Gordie Howe International Bridge from a project management perspective and answer one main question. Was the project actually successful? Well, for starters, the project is a major binational transportation system connecting Windsor, Ontario and Detroit, Michigan. We will evaluate success using more than one measure. We will look at the original objective and scope, schedule and budget performance, stakeholder management, risk response, communications, and the project's community and environmental commitments. We will also distinguish between the original project baseline and the final outcome, because the bridge did experience important schedule and cost changes. Our conclusion is going to be based on whether the project ultimately delivered its intended value while managing those changes in a controlled way. Well, to start things off, let's look at some background information about the project. The main objective of the project was to create a 6-lane international crossing between Windsor and Detroit that would improve trade capacity, mobility, border processing, and transportation redundancy. The high-level scope included 4 major components. The first one is the bridge itself. The second one is the Canadian port of entry. The third one is the US port of entry. And finally, the fourth one is the Michigan Interstate 75 interchange. Well, the original 2018 public-private partnership agreement established a contract value of about 5.7 billion Canadian dollars and also an original substantial completion date in late 2024. However, the project experienced major disruption, particularly from the COVID-19 pandemic and the different restrictions operating in Canada and the United States. In 2024, the agreement was amended to move construction and completion to September 2025 and increase the contract value to 6.4 billion Canadian dollars. The bridge ultimately opened to traffic on July 27, 2026, which means that the original time and cost baselines were not achieved. That is important, but it does not answer the entire success question. We also need to evaluate whether scope, quality, governance, stakeholder expectations, and long-term benefits were successfully delivered or not. Okay, so moving over to the next slide. This project required coordination among stakeholders with very different responsibilities and expectations. The Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority was responsible for governance and delivery oversight, whereas on the other hand, the Canadian government, the state of Michigan, and US agencies had interests in border operations, security, transportation, and economic performance. Bridging North America was responsible for major design, construction, financing, operations, and maintenance obligations. The local residents and businesses, however, were concerned about jobs and community benefits, but they were also concerned about the impacts of the construction and the accessibility. The environmental and regulatory bodies focused on compliance with the project's extensive environmental requirements. Now, these interests also created risks. For instance, the cross-border coordination could affect approvals and decisions. The contractor or resource problems could affect schedule performances. Local communities could lose trust if impacts continued longer than expected, and the environmental non-compliance could affect both schedule and reputation. And when the schedule was extended, the stakeholder expectations changed as well. That's all from my side. My teammates are going to be discussing about the next topics. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melanie, and for our slide here, we're going to talk about the risks registered, that we prioritize 5 risks based on the documented project events and their possible effects on the project objectives. So the probability and the impact ratings shown here as are our team's assessment rather than the official ratings published by the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. The first and most significant risk was the pandemic and the cross-border disruption. This became an actual issue because Canada and the United States operated under different restrictions, contributing to major schedule impacts. The second was the schedule delay. The original completion of the target was 2024, but the timeline changed and the bridge eventually opened in July 2026. The third one was the cost escalation represented a high impact risk. The overall contract value increased from approximately 5.7 billion to 6.4 million Canadian dollars. And the fourth, environmental compliance, was significant because the project had more than 450 conditions resulting from the binational environmental assessment process. This required continued monitoring and mitigation throughout the project. Finally, community impact and trust remain important because the construction lasted longer than originally expected. Surrounding communities experienced the effects on the project for longer periods as well. From a project management perspective, the important issue is not that every risk was prevented, it is how the project responded when those risks occurred. The agreement was amended and the scheduled cost baselines were updated. The environmental monitoring continued and the community engagement was extended. Therefore, the risk did not eliminate every problem, but it provided a structured way to respond when the major project conditions changed.
Hello guys, I'm going to present the slide number 5. It's about the communication. As you guys know that the communication is play very vital role in any project. So environment performance was reportedly quarterly, supporting accountability and for the mitigation and the sustainability commitments. Public information meetings were held repeatedly throughout the project in the middle and throughout to provide construction and operational updates and allow community questions and the feedbacks. The main lesson is that the communication frequency should match the stakeholder and the risk.
Hello everyone, this is Samim Sheikh. Our team considers the Gorge Howard International Bridge an overall project success, but with important qualification, it would be inaccurate to say that the project was successful because it finished exactly as originally planned. It did not the original completion target, but the target was missed and the contract value increased from 5.7 to 6.4 billion Canadian dollars. However, project success is broader than only comparing the final date and cost with the first baseline. The core transportation system was delivered, including the bridge, ports of entry and highway connection, and the bridge opened to traffic on July 27, 2026. The project also maintained complex binational governance, continued environment migration, and implemented community benefit initiatives throughout a very long construction period. From a project management perspective, the strongest argument for success is that the project adapted to major disruption without abandoning its fundamental scope or long-term purpose. Therefore, we classify it as an overall success with significant schedule and cost variance. Thank you for listening. We are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.